Hello, everyone. My name's John, and welcome to the very first episode of the Always Be Quitting video podcast series. This has been something I've wanted to do for quite a while, and I'm really excited to get started. My guest today is someone that I've worked with over the past year to help her quit vaping. Katherine's story is truly unique, especially for someone in her age group. Whether you're trying to quit vaping or smoking at any age, I think she's got some valuable insight for you. And if you're a parent of a younger person who you want to help quit vaping or smoking, there's a ton of great information in here. Katherine, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. This is the very first one, and I'm glad that you're on it.
Yeah, same.
Do you remember the first time we started working together? Tell me when we started, like what was your vaping level then?
Yes, so when I first met you, as I'm sure you can remember, I was on a pretty extreme side of the spectrum. I was vaping continuously. It was every single day. If I recall correctly, it was at a minimum every 30 minutes. That was pretty much kind of my threshold point was once I hit 30 minutes, that was kind of my cap. So it was a lot. It was pretty dramatic.
So you did something that most people who vape or smoke, especially at your age, will never do, which is seek professional help in quitting. What made you decide to do that?
Yeah, so there's two main reasons. So first of all, I know a lot of people claim that vaping helps them with their stress and anxiety, but I originally felt that way, and I thought that when I would vape, it would calm me down. But that's a very temporary solution. It was really heightening my anxiety, and it came to a point where I couldn't function on a daily basis. So I started seeing a variety of therapists and counselors, and then once I revealed that I was vaping, that's when I met you. So I think the first reason was just because I was really I wasn't happy. I wasn't living well. Any small task just felt like something super huge. So that vapor brain really did kick in, and I was having trouble kind of living on a daily basis. So that was the first reason. And then everybody has their personal reasons for quitting. One big one for me is I knew I was about to become an aunt. So I found out that I was going to become an aunt. And so that was a big thing for me, knowing that there was going to be a baby coming into my life and my family's. I knew that this was no longer just a college phase, and that I was going to be entering the big corporate world, and I had all these big changes coming up, and vaping was something that I didn't want to bring with me. So I knew that I knew that I needed help. It was something that I felt I couldn't do on my own. And so I started the quitting journey with room to spare. So I wanted to fully quit before I graduated school. So that way I didn't have to worry about all the withdrawals and all the things that come with vaping. I wanted that to be concluded before I jumped into the big world.
Cool. Excellent. There's a ton of good stuff that we're going to mine throughout this in the latter part of the video. So what were you thinking our first appointment was going to be like? Like what did that look like for you when you were like,
Sure. I was so nervous. I was so nervous. I mean, seeking help, especially professional help, is very intimidating. And I was scared. I was like, oh my God, am I going to chicken out? Like it really was. I was nervous. I thought it was going to be a super structured, very formal kind of setting. And I thought it was going to be very much like I had to come in super prepared and have all the answers, but it was quite the opposite. Thank God. We took things one at a time. It was casual. It was just like how you and I speak now. I know we have a year of our relationship under the belt, but it felt the same. We opened up, we started talking, and we kind of set expectations. I was scared the minute I walked in that office. It was like someone was going to be on my tail, and like it had to happen today. And I was really nervous that it was going to all have to happen now. And I didn't know if I was ready. But yeah, once we kind of talked things out, it was very different. It was kind of at my own pace.
I don't know what it was about you, but for some clients, I actually do get out a shock collar. So I'll put a shock collar on them, like when they come in.
Honestly,
if they give me the wrong answer.
Yeah, I was so nervous. I was like, I don't know a lot of these answers, but I'm glad I did. Yeah, it was very casual, very informal. So that was great.
That's good.
Yeah.
At some point, do you think that you adopted an always be quitting mindset?
Absolutely.
And tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So one of the biggest strategies that I know you and I talked about was I had a lot of hesitations with quitting because I was nervous about relapsing, and I was always scared that once I started, like, it had to be the rest of my life. And that was kind of a daunting thought. So something that you always told me was just how many days can you go and keep it at the zero? So how many days can you go in a row without vaping? And so making that more of a short-term vision rather than something that was more long-term and daunting was definitely a big strategy that helped me. So I would say, I'm not sure if that answers your question fully.
Oh yeah, that was great.
But yeah, that was definitely one of those things that helped me.
How do others get that? Because obviously the name of my channel and my business is Always Be Quitting, because I personally believe that no one will quit an addiction successfully for the long term until they get the mindset of always be quitting.
Yes.
How do other people get it?
I don't know. That's a great question. I would say it really is a perfect motto, solely because this isn't something that, oh, well, now I'm over a year clean. Oh, that's it. It's something you have to work for. Maybe not every day, but those thoughts are going to come and go. And this is something that you're going to think about every once in a while. I can't say that I didn't think about it like in the last week. Like, of course, like it's going to come and go. So always be quitting is very much something to kind of keep in the back of your head and say, this isn't necessarily a finite process. Like this, you have to take it a day at a time and always be quitting. So yeah, I would just say that's kind of,
it's a good name, huh?
Yeah, it's a great name. It really is. It's perfect.
And it is something that I've always believed, and particularly because I do talk a lot to people, not necessarily that come see me, but as an educational service. Like, if you want to quit, you've got to change that mindset. You've got to really approach this differently if you want to make it permanent, if you want to keep going. So during our first meeting, I asked you about whether your parents knew if you vaped or not. Can you tell us that story, please?
Sure. So, for reference, I started vaping when I was 16, and 15 or 16, around there. And like every teenager, especially when it's not legal to even have it, I hid it. And so eventually, after I would say the first year of vaping, my parents found stuff in my room. This is a very typical teenage shenanigans. But it wasn't like just a smack on the wrist. It was devastating. And my parents were both heartbroken. We'd recently I've lost my grandmother to lung cancer. So knowing that was a part of it, definitely broke their hearts more. And I knew that, but at that point I was already addicted. So that's when we first discussed it. And then I tried not vaping. I think I did cold turkey for 30 days. And then I went back to it. It was something my mom had told me, like, if you make it 30 days, like, you're going to be great. And I was like, you know what? All right. Like, let's talk through it. 30 days. I hit the 30-day mark and I was still so just, I was going through all the emotions still. So I eventually relapsed, and continued until less than a year and a half ago.
Right.
But with the quitting journey, yes, I did not tell them for a while. I wanted to make sure that I could be successful. I didn't want to disappoint them at all. It was something that I was very ashamed of. I'm ashamed of my past in general with it, but I'm happy to speak about it to help others. But it's a very embarrassing habit. It's something that is gross. Like, it's not something that you're proud to talk about. So yes, I originally did not tell them. And I decided once I was moving home for the summer, I had been on the nicotine replacement therapy. I was doing the transdermal patches, and I was very early into the journey. But I was going to my summer home where I was going to be in bathing suits, and I knew that it was the right time where I had already met with John. We'd come up with a plan, and I knew that I had the proper support system, to be successful. And so I decided to tell them then, and I kind of explained the counselors that I'd been to. I explained how I met you. And from that point on, they were honestly they were heartbroken to an extent that I had kind of been dealing with that battle for a few years by myself. But overall, they were really proud. They were thankful to you, of course. And from that point on, they were supportive as can be. Some days were not easy. I definitely had my fair share of mental breakdowns. And they were there to support me. And so it definitely was good timing, and I would say a great choice to tell those that you love, because they're there to be, they're supposed to, they're there for you. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I eventually did tell them.
That's good. And I recall there was an interesting little fact about your mom with.
Yes. So both of my parents are retired military, high rank military officials. So I grew up in a very well-structured household, very respectful household. And my mom actually worked on an anti-tobacco campaign for the U.S. Navy. So that made it all the more, I don't know all the fine details about what she worked on. Yes. So I would speak on it more if I knew all the accurate facts. But from what I know, or from what I've gathered, she's worked on anti-tobacco campaigns. Right. So that made it a bit more of like a punch in the gut, kind of, when her own child was struggling with it. I think that was definitely something that was upsetting.
I guess as a parent myself, I often wonder, well, what would happen if my own daughter started vaping or started smoking? So, yeah, maybe we should bring your mom on and have
honestly,
chat about this.
Yeah, it's crazy because I was always the kid that like nobody ever thought would. And from my young teen years, I was actually the friend that was so against it. I thought it was disgusting. I never thought it was, and I was, it was funny. I was that kid, that toddler that would like walk around and cough if they saw us. Like I was that kid. Like I was. And so
that's fun.
The tables turned and I got hit with it. And so, yeah, so it is crazy. So nobody expected it because I was so against it for so long. So I think that's why my parents never suspected it. They knew I was against it. And what's funny is the whole time I vaped, I was against it. I thought it was horrible. I just got stuck in the addictive pattern. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It is. That's a good story. I like that.
Yeah, it is. It's very silly, but my parents have been absolutely supportive and as loving as they could possibly be. Yeah. So they've been a great support system.
It's really not unusual, actually, for someone to. I loved your description. You're the girl that went around coughing. And you shouldn't smoke. Smoking's horrible.
It's so bad for you.
Vaping's bad for you. And then yes, I actually hear that more than you would think.
Yeah, so. It's silly because even when I was vaping, and say I would be out on like a night on the town or whatever, and if I had friends that like didn't vape and they would have a few drinks and then be like, hey, like, can I like let me hit it? I would say no. And there was a couple times where I got in a few fights with friends, and it wasn't because I was like, no, this is mine. Yeah. You can't have it.
I've got to have
it's expensive. No, like it was not like that. Yeah. It was 100%. It was you don't vape. I don't want you to start even on a night out drinking because God forbid you get addicted. I would never forgive myself. Right. I don't want anyone to have to go through the addictive patterns that I was stuck in. And so that's where it was more of like no, I don't care if you use it, like it's whatever, but I don't want you to end up like me is kind of how it felt. So
I mean, I think that's cool. Oftentimes that relationship goes the other way. Yes. Is that people go out pressure. And then they start drinking or whatever, and then their friends give them the vape. Here, have a vape. Yes. And then suddenly they're in your seat.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's why I was always, if I knew it was someone that did, it was a different story. But I had a couple friends who would never touch it. And so the minute they asked, I was like, are you crazy? I was like, do you know what I deal with on a daily basis? Absolutely not. Like, I love you too much to do that to you. So no.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Very interesting.
Almost all my clients that are under age 25 hide vaping from their parents. Do you think that's a good idea, or based on what you just said?
Sure. So I feel like every family dynamic is very different. I have no smokers in my family, or at least my immediate family, or my extended living now. I mean, I had my grandparents when they were younger, were smokers, but I think it depends on your family. Well, I shouldn't say that. You should definitely tell people. You should not hide anything. But all I'm saying is I think some families are a little more lax with it. I know there's teenagers that vape in front of their parents, so I think that there's very different dynamics there. But I think you should absolutely tell your parents because they love you and they're going to be concerned for your health. So I think nobody should hide it. But I know there's different family dynamics. In my case, I shouldn't have. I should have gotten help sooner.
You may have friends that are thinking about this. When you think about them, do you think that they would quit more? Would it make it easier? Would it be indifferent if they told their parents? Or, I mean, realistically, is that?
Sure. To be honest, I don't have any friends at the moment that vape. I know.
So
it's
you
kind
were
of fizzled out. I know I was the main source. Jeez. No, but I used to have a lot of friends that did. And once again, it was very much their parents didn't know.
Right.
But it was just a college, oh, I only do it when I drink. So for them, they would argue that why would I tell my parents? Like it's not a problem. But yeah, I don't know. I would urge them to tell parents and to get help, of course. But nobody in my circle right now is in any danger with it. So otherwise, I would have probably pushed them to you way sooner. I would have dragged them into your office.
Good.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us what your quit plan was? Like what did it look like? Not every little detail, but in general, how you went about it.
So I would say the strategy that I really liked that you and I kind of planned was, it was super customized. So my biggest worries and hesitations with quitting in the first place was the withdrawal symptoms. Right. So I knew, because I was vaping in those less than 30-minute intervals and I was vaping almost all the time, I knew that if I went an hour or two without vaping, I would already experience withdrawal. So my main hesitations, like I said, were with that whole process. So with my quit plan, it became more of, we're just going to do this at whatever pace my body needs to do. Because unfortunately I did have all of the physical withdrawal symptoms. So the plan itself, I decided to do the transdermal patches. I started at the highest dosage because of the
Because it was the right dosage.
It was the right dosage. Yes, you helped me calculate that. So we figured that with my level of consumption, I started at the highest dosage. And then there's on the back of those boxes, they have a little regime for you to follow. And it's like after the first 2 weeks, you switch to this one, whatever. I think I stayed on that highest patch for months. My body simply wasn't ready to jump. And so that was something that I found super unique is when I originally saw the pre-planned schedule, I was like, how on earth? Like, there's no way this is going to work. But I remember always going into your office and you'd be like, okay, I haven't seen you since however long since we last spoke. How are you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing like, depending on the check-in, I was like, I'm doing pretty good. And you'd ask if I was ready. And sometimes, a lot of the time, I was like, no, like, I don't want to jump.
What do you mean when you say ready? What do you mean?
Ready to jump down. So it was jumping down for the milligrams of nicotine through the patches. So I was always scared of those transitions, and there were 3 of them. So I think that was definitely something interesting. I found out very quickly when we started with the highest patch. I remember at first I was like, is this thing even like, is this just a sticker on my body? Like I feel nothing. And I like remember I was going crazy. And I remember calling you and I was like, this isn't working. Like I'm not doing well kind of thing. And so I remember we supplemented with the lozenges as well, which were like pretty much for those who don't know, it's just a Tic Tac pretty much. And so that always helped with something that would totally calm my heart rate. So I remember I used those as well. So that was kind of my plan. And it was just to take it at whatever pace I needed. There was a big learning curve. At one point, I was doing really well on one of the patches. I was doing like phenomenal. And so I took it off one night and I didn't put it back on. I thought that I was just doing so well. And I was at the beach and I was having a good time. And then all of a sudden, I just crumbled. Like I was doing well because I was on the right dose. And so I had to go through, took me like 24 hours to get out of it, but it was full withdrawal once again. So it's very important to kind of listen to what your body needs. It's very important to listen to yourself and just to take it at the pace that you need. I did it for months.
One thing that happens with people is they typically, with nicotine replacement therapy, they won't stay on it long enough and they'll come off of it too early and they'll use a dose that is far too low. And then they fail and then they relapse back to smoking or vaping or using an oral product or whatever. Why did you stay committed to it for so long?
I stayed committed to it for so long because I was determined. I did not want to go back to vaping. I know I mentioned that in one of our first meetings.
One could argue that you quit vaping very slowly. In fact, probably 99% slower than everyone else. You didn't seem to be in a big rush. I think that in some parts I even had to nudge you forward, which is part of my job and part of the things that you do. If you're good at this, you move people forward. Why did you take this gradual approach? And I don't know, tell me that.
Sure. So I definitely took my time, especially with the NRT process. My main reason for doing so was that I didn't want to fail. So I would stay at that at a level. I would stay, say, at whatever level patch I'd be on. And then once I got comfortable, I was like, this is working. I'm not vaping. I'm not having withdrawals. So I got comfortable. So the nudging was perfect. That's exactly what I needed. So then when you nudged me the next one, I would get nervous to the transition. I would do it. And then after a week or however long it took for that step in the recovery process, once I felt that sense of comfortability again, and I was like, oh my God, I'm another step lower and the withdrawals are gone. So I took my time because I didn't want to fail.
Yeah, I think you said something important there. Is you saw success.
Yes.
What happens with most people when they see success is they say, I'm done.
Yes.
I can quit now. I've got this success. I've got this.
And that was the mistake that I touched on earlier
Right.
over the summer when I was like, hey, I'm doing great. Yeah, it's because it's working. So
Right.
don't stop doing it. So I think especially once that happened, it took a lot more nudging to jump from patches and the whole transition. I think once I kind of had that minor setback, I was scared to move again.
Right.
So, but you're right. A lot of people do just stop when they think things are working, but it's because they're working. That's
Right.
why you feel good. So, and I remember you saying that to me.
It's a paradox.
It
yes.
is.
And,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right. A lot of times when I'm working with people, I don't think I was nudging you. I certainly wasn't nudging you all the time. In fact, just the opposite. I was saying, if you feel like you need to be on a product longer, stay on it longer, because that's what success is. It's staying on it so that it's working for you. But a lot of people, I have to slow them down. I didn't have to slow down.
Yeah, that is unique. I feel like I'm surprised a lot of people, well, I take that back. I'm not surprised that people want to do it quickly because doing the patches is not fun. It's not a fun process. I would spend like 10 minutes every night scrubbing off like the sticker residue on my back. Like it wasn't a fun process, but
Right.
I remember you and I also would talk and you said, hey, even if you're on this patch, like if you're not vaping, you're succeeding. And
Right.
so I think that was also something where I was like, I'm in no rush. I'm not vaping. I'm doing it.
Right.
And so I think that I was really taking that to heart, and I just found success in it. Even though I was still using those patches, if I wasn't vaping to the extent that I was proud of myself. Yeah. So I think that was also a big step.
Right. I think that a lot of people, and we're talking about this a lot, is we're talking about the patch. Mm-hmm. What you are really doing outside of the patch is what was important. That's what equals quitting. Yes. The patch does not equal quitting. No. And I know we talked about it dozens of times, that quitting is you're changing your behavior and you're changing your life and you're changing your reactions and you're changing your choices. And people always get focused on, if they choose, not everyone chooses nicotine replacement and they don't need to necessarily,
sure.
But people get really focused on, the nicotine replacement, when I say, I'm not focused on that at all. I just want to know what's happening in your brain, what's happening in your life, what's happening in your decisions. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about that in a second here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember touching on that is you kind of reminded me that I'd been vaping for all of my young adult life. Like I didn't know
basically
what it was like.
Yeah.
I mean, I could barely remember what it was like to live without vaping.
Right.
So you're right. It wasn't just the patches. It was reminding myself, oh, well, I just finished eating a meal, but I've always vaped after I eat a meal for the last 6 years. Well, all right. So I guess I just keep going. Like it was weird. Like it really was. Like it was, and a lot of the vaping was just, what's the word where you're, I didn't know I was doing it. It was very like
second nature.
Second nature. Exactly. It would be like, there'd be times where I would vape and I would have no idea because I'd put it over here. And then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, it's over there. I'm like, I didn't even know I was, like, it was so second nature.
Right.
So I think you're right. It was a big transition in just living life without it. It was strange. It was a big change.
I know it is weird. And when I describe to people, I think, let me tell you what I think is going to happen. At first they think that's not going to happen. And
yeah, it's pretty crazy. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
What did I do or provide to you during our sessions that you didn't expect?
I would say the first thing that I didn't expect was kind of your approach to coaching and your personality.
Okay.
I would say that when you think about a like a professional that works with like nicotine and drug, like it seems like a very like hoity-toity, like, you know what I mean? Like, I was scared that it was going to be this like super formal, like, hi, my name's, like, you know what I mean? And when I walked in and you were human. And I think that was something that surprised me, especially on our first meeting. I was like, wait, he's kind of just like, he's like a dad, like he's cool. So I think that was something that absolutely
hold on,
surprised
I'm going to stop you. Did you just say I was a dad and I was cool?
Sorry, Millie.
I'm gonna recut this as a short and send it out as my Christmas card present to my kids.
Yeah, I did say that.
Yeah. Wow.
I think it's more. I was just surprised that I was just going to be comfortable. And I think that's really what got me. Is I was like, oh, well, I'm just walking in and having a conversation. We're laughing and we're working to better myself. And it wasn't scary. So I think that was definitely what surprised me most.
Do you think that you would still be vaping if you wouldn't have seen me?
No. Oh, wait. Yes.
I love that. That was a perfect answer.
No, wait. Is yes right? Do you think you'd still be vaping? No. What am I trying to say?
Okay,
No.
I'll ask you.
Wait.
I said,
do
you think that you would still be vaping if you had never met me?
Yes, I would still be vaping if I did not meet you. Okay, so the answer is yes, not no. That's so funny.
So
okay.
Why?
I needed the nudging. I needed the support system, and I was scared about doing NRT in general, and I know that's not a path for everyone, but I wanted someone who was a professional. I wanted someone that was educated well on it. And there were a lot of facets to it. So there was that emotional support and just being the support system, nudging, keeping me on track, and then also just reassuring me that what I'm doing is right. And so I think those three were the main reasons why, if I hadn't met you, I'd probably still be, unfortunately, off somewhere vaping. So I'm very glad that I did.
Yeah. And I think, granted, I think that we look at other types of care, such as maybe someone that needs a physical therapist. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they got better because they had a physical therapist. Yes. But a lot of times with this particular addiction, people will think, oh, I don't need help. I don't need to see a professional, that they're not really going to do very much for me.
Yeah, I was that person for a few years, obviously. I tried quitting many times, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers, if they are vapors, they've probably tried to quit as well. And a lot of times you fail because it's something that's very difficult to do alone. And I think although there is a sense of shame and embarrassment that comes with seeking professional help, I mean, that's like what you're there for. You know what I mean? There's nothing to be embarrassed about. So I think it's very important to reach out.
The weird thing is, and I'm going to use this example again, and I often use examples like this, nobody gets ashamed to see a physical therapist because their knees bad, you know?
Exactly. I know.
It's just, there's a weird collection of emotions that get attached to it, that I think is one of the main barriers for people literally changing their lives by quitting. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me?
When you first met me.
Yes.
How did you know, or did you know, whether or not I was going to be successful? Is this something that you see? Because I know you've seen a variety of patients in your history. Is this like a sixth sense that you have where you're like, they're going to make it or they're not? Is there anything you knew when you first met?
That's a hard one to say because yeah, some people I'll look at and I'll say, you'll never quit. But I don't do it based on what they look like or how they present themselves. Typically, it's what they're saying and where they are in their mental thinking is really what's going to determine if they're going to have progress. It's also things like, did they show up for the appointment? Did they keep the appointment? That's a big one right there. If people no show for the appointment, granted, things happen in their lives or what have you, and they miss, but that is, if all other things being equal, that is a big reason to say, well, this person's probably not going to quit. I don't know that I have a sixth, excuse me.
Hard to say.
A sixth sense any more than other people in healthcare or in the industry or coaching.
So what's the most rewarding part of what you do? Is there any specific aspect of it that gets you motivated to wake up in the morning, or?
Well, I like to think that people are going to wake up no matter what. So
Yeah, I mean, like
hopefully
get up in the
things are
morning was
going well
probably the
if you
better
wake up
word.
in the morning.
Yes, yes. I mean, is there something that gets you going? Is it something that inspires you when you start your day?
I really, as far as this, it's fun to help people quit vaping or
Mm-hmm.
smoking. It is an addiction that doesn't have necessarily the types of immediate consequences that other addictions do. So in that case, it's a little more laid back. It's a little more. You can really develop a rapport with a person, and people typically comes from all different walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's not just one Catherine.
Yes.
You're just a small sliver of the types of people
Mm-hmm.
that smoke or vape that do get to quit. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting, and I love seeing and hearing about people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's exciting to me, and I've always been. I don't know why. It's just cool when someone quits. Yeah,
Absolutely. I completely agree. Being on the other end of it, it's a very rewarding experience in general. So
yeah.
I can completely see that. Is there a reason why you chose nicotine to be your like special like your area of expertise? Or did you ever consider like being into like a broader kind of drug abuse scene or any other, I'm trying to think of how I'd phrase that, but
No, that's good. I think I
yeah.
understand. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a whole podcast one day about my career choices and how I got here. Um, I don't know. I never set out to be this. I just became this, and I enjoyed it. And I think a lot of times when people are developing their career, you find something that really gravitates with you, and something that you can get paid for. That's very
Mm-hmm.
important. And I think that's in if you enjoy it, it's easy to pursue that, provided you can make a living with it. I think it. I just like doing it, and I like talking to people and helping people. So.
Yeah, it's great. So, from personal experience, I know we discussed how it can be difficult to reach out and get professional help. What's one piece of advice, or rather, just what would you say to viewers that are listening right now and they're on the fence? I know it's a scary process, but what would you say to them to really kind of push them to get the help that they need?
I think one thing is to get people off the fence is to look at your motivation, find out the reasons that you want to quit. A lot of the things that I do with my channel and with my website are trying to get people off that fence, to push to the quitting side. For example, I have a quiz that's a how ready are you to quit quiz where someone can go on and they can take a 20 question assessment, and it gives them an idea of are they ready to quit? What's their motivation level?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for a lot of people, just doing that is important, because even their score matters, but doing the actual questions and thinking about them helps people start thinking about, oh, well, if I want to quit, I've got to work on these, or to increase my motivation, I've probably got to work on some of these areas. So a lot of the stuff that I do to help people is to try to get them to that. And of course, I know you've been on this channel and you've seen a lot of my videos. A lot of the always be quitting stuff that we talked about, you've got to get that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
A person doesn't quit smoking or vaping without that first mindset. There's a lot of different ways to quit, but you got to have that. So
Yeah.
I really focus a lot on change that to I'm not going to do this forever. In fact, right now I'm going to take care of it, and I might not be able to fix it immediately, but I'm always in that mindset. I'm working toward it. So did that answer your
Absolutely.
question?
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely. I think the other thing that kind of crosses my mind in regards to that would be, other than just kind of jumping the hurdle to get professional help, I feel like a big hesitation for a lot of people is kind of the financial responsibility that
Mm-hmm.
comes with it. So I know, what would you say to those viewers that are kind of hesitant about, paying for a service like that? Like, how, a lot of people are convinced that, well, I could just do it on my own. I don't need to pay for an additional service. What would kind of be
Right.
your answer to that?
A nicotine addicted brain is magically deceiving.
Mm-hmm.
It changes the way the person thinks about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I typically would point out to, let's say, a pack a day smoker.
Mm-hmm.
A pack a day smoker in the United States is probably spending $10 to $15 a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's $4,000 a year when you put it like that. And unless that person quits, they're going to spend $4,000 a year. So let's say they listen to us talking and they decide, I'm going to quit. if they didn't decide that, they'd spend this time next year, they'd have spent $4,000 because nothing's going to change. So people often say, I don't have money to quit, but they're giving $4,000 a year to tobacco companies. Same thing with vaping. It's a little bit less expensive, but the same thing happens. That cost adds up. So what I tell people is, you pay for a lot of services in your life. If you got to pay for someone to help you quit, that's going to save you tens of thousands of dollars.
Later in life.
And it's this weird thing that when you point it out to the person, they're like, yeah, but their brain still says, nope, you don't need to do that. No, you don't need that help.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep vaping, keep it in,
Yeah. It's definitely interesting because, like you said, it's whether you're spending that $4,000 and giving it to these harmful companies, or you're giving it to yourself.
Right.
I know you're paying for the service of a professional and a counselor, but that's going to change the rest of your life. So I like how you put that.
Yeah, and I mean, even if let's say you spend $800 a year on vaping, that's $800. That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I could make a whole video channel and a whole channel about all the ancillary harms that's coming from vaping and smoking and using tobacco that really isn't even financial. People can afford to do it. They just got to change that mindset again.
Absolutely.
So nearly every person that smokes or vapes across the board will say, I can't quit because it fixes my stress and my anxiety. Let's talk about that, because you and I, we spent a good amount of time talking about stress and anxiety. So
we did.
What
Absolutely.
are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the stress and anxiety was one of my biggest motivators for quitting in general. I knew...
Well, that's the exact opposite.
I know. Well, I was stuck in the loop of this is helping, but I knew, and I think a lot of viewers can agree, yes, it's helping your stress and anxiety in the moment, but long-term chemically, it's making it worse. So it's a weird cycle, but I was stuck in that loop where I was like, I have a super stressful exam. All right, I'll vape and then I'm calm back down. So I was stuck in that for a long time, but I knew especially that I was ready to quit once my anxiety was still as heightened and vaping didn't help anymore. So I hit kind of a new threshold, and that's when I had kind of decided like, all right, if this isn't even helping anymore, now it's just making it worse. Like, so that's kind of when I decided.
Right.
Throughout the process, the process of quitting, I was nervous about being anxious and having that stress get worse, and then not having that old outlet that I used to have. So there were a lot of techniques that I used.
Let's hear about some of them.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, tell the viewers, because the people, this is such a critical thing. I hear this from so many people. In fact, I have an intake form when I start coaching with someone that they check off the things that causes them to smoke or vape, and anxiety and stress is checked every single time. It's probably 100%.
Absolutely. So I've learned a lot of different techniques throughout my recovery journey, and even before I started. So I utilized them throughout the entire process. So for some examples, whenever I would get like super anxious, like to the point where like you're in panic attack mode, I was always told to hold an ice cube in your hand. That's a silly one, but it works because it shocks you back. It like brings you back to your body kind of thing. So that was kind of a sillier one. But other than that, I heavily relied on guided meditations, which I know sounds silly, but don't knock it till you try it. Spotify has a bunch of free ones that I used all the time. And just having someone talk me down. It was very similar to why I got a coach. I like to talk in general. I talk a lot.
You're good at it. Yeah, you're doing a great job.
I'm very much a talker, and I like to talk through my problems. And I know not a lot of people can relate to that, but having the guided meditations kind of talk me down in what I was feeling, them telling me when to breathe, reminding me that when I'm getting all like crazy and shaky and I'm getting all anxious, them saying, all right, hold your breath. 1, 2, specifically telling me what to do. And then there was some science behind it that I couldn't explain. Right. But there were things where like those certain breathing exercises were subconsciously relaxing my nervous system. Right. And there was science behind however that went. But other than that, I'm trying to think of some other silly ones. A lot of breathing exercises, a lot of the meditations. The ice cube is silly. Another big thing when you're quitting, just to distract you whenever you get anxious and stressed, is to call someone who knows. That was a big thing for me. Whether that was you. I would sometimes call you. I would call my mom. I would call a variety of different outlets just to talk through it. And that again,
Right.
talking through it always helped me. Other than that, moving your body, getting outside. When you're stressed, take a shower. When you're anxious, go for a walk. Like, there's so
Right.
many outlets. Or go spend time with friends, go do a hobby that you've always wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do. So there was a lot of those distracting habits that helped as well. But in the peak of nerves and anxiety, I really leaned more towards
Right.
the holistic approaches of just breathing through it and knowing that this too shall pass.
Right.
So I think that that's another big thing. Is just remember that it's temporary and eventually you're going to get through it. So
Right.
just
I do
reminding
think
yourself.
those things that you're talking about are basically, they call them
The
grounding
grounding.
techniques,
Yes.
which are so good because anything that you can do to access your nervous system
Yeah.
and calm it down is helpful. And the cool thing about, there's a lot of things that aren't cool about the internet,
Yes.
but the cool thing about the web and all that's out there is that people can access those. I use them to help myself
Yeah.
get to sleep sometimes
Yes.
when I can't sleep. Just being able to control your breath and
Mm-hmm.
pull yourself down out of
Mm-hmm.
an amped up situation is just it's an incredible technique to learn. And I talk to almost all of my patients, and I gotta say I'm not a big touchy feely, oh, you gotta do this and get in touch with yourself
Sure.
type
Yeah.
kind of guy, but it works when you can control your nervous system and
Mm-hmm.
control your heart rate and control your breathing. That's powerful in a lot
It's
of different
very
situations. So
powerful. Yeah, absolutely.
do you think that your anxiety went up or down after you quit?
So um, I'll figure out how to properly answer that. I think it's honestly, it was a lot worse. I've learned to manage it better. Overall, I would say it's absolutely gone down. I think a big part of the anxiety going down is the guilt that was released. So when it came to vaping and whenever I was anxious while being a vapor, I kind of would tell myself, well, you're doing it to yourself. You're putting these horrible chemicals into your body. No wonder you're feeling anxious.
Uh-huh.
So then once I'd quit, even if I still was having those anxious feelings, I was like, okay, but you're doing everything right now. Like
Right.
like it's you're a lot less to blame, and I think that's what helped me. I would say that it's definitely gone down overall because I know that I've made a really big
Mm-hmm.
step for myself and I've definitely changed my life. So I think knowing that the vaping is out of the picture makes me a less anxious individual. There's a lot less guilt that I would say comes with the
Right.
process.
I loved your last answer because you actually answered the question that I had next, which the question was, I think we live in this social media world now where people talk about hacks for this and hacks for that.
Yes.
Hacks are this huge thing. And you just talked about hacks for coping mechanisms. Like, here's how I hacked my brain and all that sort of stuff that gets out there. That was super cool. So thanks for answering
Yeah,
that one
of
already.
course. And I know we somewhat touched on this earlier, and this is what I think I was going to mention, but I was blanking on. It's very important, especially if you're someone who's vaped for a long period of time, whether that's years or however you want to phrase it. I would say that I vaped for a very long time. 6 years of my 22-year-old life. That's a long time.
That is a long time. That's a good
Yes,
high percentage.
it's quite a bit of it. So I think the other big part about quitting and finding coping mechanisms is learning how to live without vaping. Like,
Right.
it was a totally new lifestyle, and something so simple, or what felt like was so simple, was integrated in everything that I did. So along with all those coping mechanisms that we touched upon earlier, it was finding a new routine that it didn't feel weird if I wasn't vaping. So like a couple of things that I decided to do was I got a group exercise pass.
Uh-huh.
So I did daily yoga. I did yoga like 5 days a week, which was super fun. It's also great just for your health in
Oh
general.
man, that's amazing for your brain and your body.
Absolutely. And so that was always a very calming activity that I did at the end of the day. So instead of when I was like doing homework and vaping and I was like, okay, well now I'm going to go do yoga. I'm going to go do this. So structuring your life with new things that you didn't do when you vaped, I think also was a really important coping mechanism. And that's something that I also wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Those are all great ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. They're fun.
Yep.
Get active. Yeah.
Yep.
Move while you can.
So,
So
how many months after we started working together did your identity change from I'm a vapor to I'm not a vapor anymore?
that's a really great question. I think I officially kind of had that identity change in my brain once months wise, it'd be difficult to quantify, but I would say once I was switching to nicotine replacement therapy and I was stable. So when I originally transitioned and tried doing nicotine replacement therapy for the first few weeks, whatever it was, I wasn't doing great. I mean, I was not vaping, which was
Right. Yeah.
amazing.
That's
But
yeah.
I was still tense, and it was still a really big transition. But the minute that I hit that comfortable level where I was still thinking about vaping every day, but I wasn't doing it and I wasn't going through crazy withdrawal symptoms, that's when I considered myself to be a non-vapor because I knew that I was going to do it. At that point, I was too far in, and I was very persistent, and I was like, you know what? Like I'm too far in. Like
Right.
I'm not going to fail now, and that was something that was also really important to me because I hit at that stage in my journey. I had kind of publicized it more. So I know that I had told you, I told my
Well, you
close
had to
circle
tell
of
me.
friends. Yes, well, yes. And so
Yeah.
it became not only something where if I were to relapse or if I were to go back to being a vapor, I wouldn't just disappoint myself again, but
Right.
I would disappoint the people that I loved. And that's what really pushed me.
Right.
I was like,
So you pushed up the consequences of
absolutely.
failure.
I was like, John would be so upset. I'm kidding. I was like, no, like I want to do this for everyone who's invested in it with me. And I've had so many people help me and I don't want to waste their time. So like I
Right.
knew once I was comfortable, and so that was probably a couple months, it was probably 3 to 4, where I knew that I was going to do it. And
Right.
I was more determined than ever. I would say I consider myself to be a non-vapor. I never wanted to pick it up again.
So was there a day that you never thought about? Do you recall a day when there was like, I never thought about vaping this day? Like when one day you wake up and you're like, I didn't even think about vaping yesterday.
I don't know. That's a
Huh?
really interesting question. I would say that I think about it way less often than I used to.
Uh-huh.
So it's definitely declined gradually.
Right.
I would say I think about it often still, and I think that's because of the environment that I'm in. I've been in college. I'm out and about with people that vape all the time. So having it around me is definitely makes me think about it. It was never a question of, oh, I'm going to pick it up. I always knew that I didn't want to, and I knew that determination was still
Right.
there. But having it physically around you, obviously you're going to think about it. Like they're blowing it in your face. Like, of course I'm thinking about vaping, but I think once I transition into this next chapter of my life, when I graduate, I think it's going to be barely a thought.
So
I think
you're
that's
thinking
exciting.
about it, but what are you thinking about it? Is it positive thoughts? Is it negative thoughts? Is it both? What is?
I would say
Because you're basically a year, or you had your
yes,
anniversary recently.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. A little less than a month ago, I hit my year mark, which is super exciting. I think the thoughts are kind of in the middle. I would say it depends on my mood. There's some days where I'm like, dang, I am really stressed. That would be nice. But I'm like, hell no, pardon my language. But like, no, like I'm not doing that. But I do think about picking it up sometimes, like
Right.
full transparency. And I'm sure a lot of people that have quit do think about that. And I think that's
Right.
normal. There's some days where I look at people doing it and I'm like, disgusting. I wish like you would put that away. And there's other days where I'm just not fazed by it. So I think it really comes and goes. My
Right.
attitude about it changes. But yeah, I would say it's flexible. Most of the time, I just think about how I think a big part of it is pride. So when I see people doing it and I'm not tempted, or I'm thinking about my initial reaction to seeing people vape, I'm
Right.
like, wow, I broke a 6-year addiction. Like, let's go. Like, you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where probably is my initial reaction. It's just there's a level of pride there for accomplishing that.
Good. Well, you did awesome. I mean,
Thanks.
this is how it's supposed to go.
Yes, yes.
I do want to point out that I think I said that you quit slowly, and that 99% of the people don't go that slow. But I think actually the truth is it takes everyone a while to convert to being a non-vapor or
Yes.
non-smoker, truly to have that change. And the fact is you were doing tiny little steps to get there. But even if someone just tries to immediately do a cold turkey attempt, which sometimes does work,
Yeah.
they're not a non-smoker or a non-vapor 2 days later.
Exactly.
It's months later, because if I ask them the same question that I ask you, people will throw out, oh, it was 3 months, it was 6 months, it was a
takes-
year when
yeah.
I knew that I always know that I can relapse, because that's just the way that it goes. If I make some choices, I could go back to smoking or vaping.
Sure.
But if they don't, if they don't do that, they know inside I'm likely I don't think of myself that way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's typically months down there. So when I say, oh, she quit vaping slowly,
Yes.
you did a slow, methodical thing and you got to the same point. You just did it easier,
Yeah.
frankly. You
True.
suffered less.
True. Yeah, I did. So I guess when we talk in terms of slow, just for like the viewers kind of reference, the last time that I vaped was a year and a month ago. So the April 24th, I vaped and then put it down.
Uh-huh.
And so from that day on, that's been the quitting journey.
Right.
And so I probably stopped using NRT. I don't know, we've guessed 8 to 10 months into it. And then I've had a few months with nothing at all. And so it really is it's only a year in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, that's a long time, but like I said, it's just, you got to do what your body tells you to do and just kind of follow through, you know. You can do hard things.
I always tell people, don't look at someone else and say, I've got to do it exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, ish. You got to do a lot of the same things, but there's a lot of pathways to get to that seat over there.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing to note, that there's no
right way necessarily.
There's some wrong ways. There's some there's millions of very wrong ways, I can tell you. And I've heard probably 900,000 of the wrong ways.
That's true. I did it the wrong way for a couple of years. So
everyone does the wrong way a lot. But I think getting to that right way is the cool thing. And congratulations on doing it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thank you again. You know, you've played an instrumental role in this. So like I said earlier, couldn't have done it without you. So it's more of a thank you to you. It's changed my life, as cheesy as it is. It has. Absolutely. You gave me years of my life back. So.
Changing your life is not cheesy. Changing your life is awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
If anything that we've discussed has resonated with you, especially if you're ready to finally quit vaping or smoking for good, I encourage you to visit our website, alwaysbequitting.com. There you'll find information about coaching opportunities, about our upcoming quitting groups, and additional resources to support your journey. I also recommend checking out our YouTube channel. There's lots of great information for you there. And if you're unsure about your motivation level, I really recommend you take our How Ready Are You to Quit quiz on our website. It only takes about 10 minutes, and it's going to give you some valuable free insight how to help you move forward. We're always looking for guests for future episodes. Whether you successfully quit, you've helped someone quit, you might do research, you might do addiction counseling. If that's you, or if you know someone with a compelling story or some expertise to share, or maybe you're a counselor, please reach out through our website. Your experience could inspire others on their journey. I can't stress enough that quitting is possible at any age, but the earlier you do it, the better. I'm John, and remember, always be quitting until you've quit for the last time. Thank you.